Chapter 7 is on marriage. Marriage is something that's one of those cultural universals that occurs across the globe. It's defined as a legal and social recognized relationship that includes sexual, economic, and social rights and responsibilities for partners. In the United States, the history of marriages changed over the last 230 years. Colonial America saw a marriage synonymous with the foundation of the nation, so it became part of the bedrock of U.S. culture. It began to be redefined in the 19th century, that'd be the 1800s, because of the spreading out of the population across the United States, and even more so during the Industrial Revolution. We saw more of a division of labor between work out of the house and work in the house. When you look at the reasons why people say they married, by far the most common one is that the person's in love, which begs the question, is that something that changes over time? In today's world, we experience a couple of things. One's called the marital decline perspective. It's a position that institution of marriage is increasingly being threatened by hedonistic or pleasure-seeking pursuits and of personal happiness at the expense of making long-term commitments. Another perspective is a marital resilience perspective, a view that overall marriage is no weaker than the past, but all families need an increase in the structural supports over time, and that results primarily from families moving around the country. And we see marriage rates declining overall. When you look at the population as a whole in 2013, they picked 15 years old because that's a good starting point, but 52% of men and 49% of women are married, whereas 34% of men and 29% have never married. You also notice that divorce rates are somewhat higher as well. Marriage tends to be more common among whites than blacks and Hispanics. And the median age of first marriages has stayed relatively constant. In 1890, it was 26 years, 0.1 for men, 22 for women. By 2013, it was 29 for men and 26.6 for women. So there is a drift upwards. Noticing that there was a decrease in the 1950s and 60s. Some people delay marriage for lots of reasons, economic, educational. People are just not sure what they want to do. And then there's the issue of homogamous versus heterogamous marriages. That is, marrying people like you versus marrying someone who's not like you. So homogamous marriages are types of marriage in which spouses share certain social characteristics such as race, ethnicity, religion, education, age, or even social class. Heterogamous relationships, a type of marriage in which spouses do not share certain characteristics such as race, ethnicity, religion, education, age, and social class. One thing that's happened in today's world is that there are more interracial and interethnic marriages. 100 years ago, whites and blacks would probably not be married, but today it's fairly common. And it's not just interracial between whites and blacks, but between any ethnic group or racial group. In fact, up until 1967, there were what were called anti-miscegenation laws that forbid the interracial marriages between blacks and whites. Those were overturned by the Supreme Court. And as you notice, between over a 30-year span of time, new marriages, the percentage of interracial marriages has almost risen 2.5 times. So interethnic marriages means a type of marriage in which spouses from different countries for different cultural, religious, or ethnic backgrounds marry. Marriage also has some issues when it's across social class boundaries. So people from one class, let's say middle class, marrying into someone who's in the upper class, that can be an issue. And even between interfaith marriages. I know people who were, one partner was Jewish, one was Christian, and of course that did cause some problems, even between Protestants and Catholics. One thing that's changed in today's world as of 2014 was the Marriage Equality Act and the emergence of same-sex marriages. Before that, there were civil unions, which were public policies designed to extend some benefits to partners who are not legally married. But now that that's the case, that is the law, that it gives full marriage benefits to both partners. Some of the differences between marriage and civil unions include portability of rights, gifts and property transfer, income tax status, whether you file singly or jointly, spousal or child support, medical decisions, especially end-of-life decisions, immigration, which is a huge issue, and of course, as the chart describes in Figure 7.5, the attitudes about gay marriage have changed over time. So in 2001, 57% opposed gay and lesbian marriage, and that's fallen pretty dramatically to 44%. While attitudes favoring gay marriage has risen from 35 to 49%. This may be partly reflected in the changing demographics of the United States too. Those who are in favor of same-sex marriage, people on the left, Democrats, people born after 1981, millennials, and unaffiliated people were most in favor of allowing same-sex marriage. There are changing attitudes about other marital issues, including non-marital sex, that's premarital sex, or attitudes about cohabitation. This may reflect changes in religiosity over time. Less religious people don't have an issue necessarily with cohabitation, even having children out of wedlock, and attitudes about who stays home and who works outside of the home. It's not the 1950s anymore, and very often there's two family wage earners, and even who does what in the family in terms of division of labor. There is a marriage premium, which suggests that married people are happier, healthier, and financially better off than those who are not married, which is one of the reasons, especially as the population ages, that people either stay married or get remarried. And of course, there may be a selection effect, that is, that people who marry may be different from those who don't marry. For example, they may be happier, healthier, and have more money to start with. Some of the benefits include improved health, psychologically and physically, economic security, not worrying about whether they can afford to eat or pay bills or travel. There is a wage premium, that is that generally speaking, married men earn more than unmarried counterparts, particularly married women with stay-at-home wives. And of course, there's a certain amount of social capital that goes along with that. The goods and services that are byproducts of social relationships, including who you know, the type of support network you have, what type of information is accessible to you, and even the types of financial help a person might get. Which begs the question, does marriage benefit everyone? are there such things as his and her marriages? That's debatable, depending on the perspective, depending on the type of marriage to start with. But generally, marriage benefits both partners, but it doesn't necessarily benefit both of them equally. Race and ethnicity also affects the benefits of marriage. There are different types of marriage. So some typologies exist, including conflict-habituated marriages, where there's frequent conflict, although the marriage tends to be enduring. So they fight a lot, but they don't ever end the marriage. There are devitalized marriages, which are enduring marriages that exist, but they don't have much passion, either physically or emotionally. There are passive congenial marriages that are enduring, that include little conflict, but also a little excitement as well, very similar to the last one. And there are vital marriages, a type of marriage in which the lives of partners are intertwined. Physical and emotional intimacy are important, and both work hard to communicate and compromise so their relationship continues to be satisfying and enjoyable. This might be a goal or an ideal for many people. And then, of course, there's the last one, a total marriage, which are types of marriage in which spouses share many facets of their lives, such as their own business, their friends, their hobbies, with few independent interests. Think about people in your own life, your family, if you're married, or your parents' marriages, how their marriages would be rated in terms of this typology. There are tools to measure marital satisfaction. The psychologists and family and marriage therapists use. And of course, which begs the question, if you're going to have marital satisfaction, what makes it successful? And in order, faithfulness is the top at a whopping 93 to 95%, even over 30 years. Happy sexual relationship, sharing household chores, adequate income at around 50%, good housing, shared religious beliefs, shared tastes and interests, children. That's an interesting one, that it's actually dropped over the last 30 years, almost 25%, and agreement on politics. I wonder if there's any of these that are missing that should be in there. What might you add to the list? There are different types of marriage movements, that is, like political and religious movements, including the activities of groups of some religious leaders, marriage and family therapists, and government leaders who hope to influence public policy to promote and strengthen traditional marriages. These tend to be more conservative groups, including covenant marriages, which only happens in 3 states, a type of marriage available in 3 states that restricts access to divorce, requires premarital counseling, and imposes other rules and regulations. Basically, in covenant marriages, the couple agrees never to divorce, although that's not a binding contract. And then, of course, there's peer marriages, which are a type of marriage in which couples consider themselves to be equal status or standing in the relationship, which begs the question, why wouldn't it be that in the first place?